I've driven long highways my entire adult life. Truck stops, rest areas, empty roads at 2 a.m. None of it ever bothered me. I actually liked the isolation. It gave me time to think. That night, though, was the first time I truly understood how vulnerable you are when the road stretches on forever and there's nowhere to turn off. This happened in late October, just after daylight savings time ended. I was driving from a small town in western Pennsylvania toward Ohio after visiting my sister. I left later than planned, around 10:30 p.m., because her kids didn't want me to go, and I stayed longer than I should have. The highway I took was a long, rural interstate. Miles of forest on both sides, almost no exits, and barely any traffic once midnight hit. The weather was cold but clear. No rain, no fog, just darkness and the hum of tires on asphalt. By the time I passed the last lit-up town, it was close to midnight. The road ahead looked like a black ribbon swallowed by trees. My phone had no signal, but I wasn't worried. I'd driven this stretch dozens of times before. About 20 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me. That wasn't unusual, but what stood out was how far back they were. Just two white dots in my rearview mirror, hovering at the same distance for several minutes. They weren't gaining on me, and they weren't falling behind. I checked my speed, 68 miles per hour. Normal. I moved into the right lane to let them pass. They didn't. The headlights stayed behind me, still perfectly centered in my rearview mirror. After about a minute, I moved back into the left lane. Still nothing. At first, I laughed it off. Maybe the driver was distracted. Maybe they were nervous driving at night. Whatever. 10 more minutes passed. The headlights were still there. Same distance. Same alignment. No swerving. No fluctuation in speed. I started to feel that uncomfortable itch in my chest, the one that tells you something's off, even when you can't explain why. I slowed down to 60. They slowed down too. I sped up to 75. They matched me instantly. That's when I realized they weren't just behind me. They were following me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Highways play tricks on your mind at night. No landmarks. No curves. Just straight lines that make it feel like nothing's changing. Still, I wanted confirmation. I flicked my turn signal on and took the next exit. It wasn't really an exit, more like a ramp leading to a dark service road. No lights, no buildings, just a narrow stretch of pavement disappearing into trees. As soon as I turned, the headlights followed. My stomach dropped. I stayed on the service road for about half a mile before it dead-ended into a small gravel turnaround. No gas station, no houses, just forest and silence. I slowed and stopped. The car behind me stopped too. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. The other car stayed about 30 feet back. Its headlights were still on, blinding me through my mirrors. I waited for the driver to honk. They didn't. I waited for them to back up. They didn't. Finally, I threw my car into reverse and backed up toward the highway ramp. The other car reversed at the exact same time. Perfect synchronization. That's when panic really set in. I whipped the car around and sped back on the highway, my tires screeching on the pavement. As soon as I merged, I floored it. 85 and 90. The headlights stayed right behind me. I could feel my hands shaking. My mouth was dry. I tried calling 911, but my phone still had no signal. The screen just showed no service and an empty battery icon blinking red. I was alone. The next exit was 15 miles away. For the next 10 minutes, I did everything I could think of. I changed lanes constantly. I braked suddenly. I sped up, slowed down, drifted toward the shoulder, then corrected. Nothing worked. The car stayed behind me like it was attached by an invisible string. Finally, I noticed something else, something that made my skin crawl. The headlights weren't normal. They were too high off the ground. Not truck high, not SUV high, higher. And there was something else, too. No visible grille lights. No reflections. Just two bright, white circles floating in the darkness. I risked a longer glance in the mirror. I couldn't see the shape of the car. Only the lights. My chest tightened. I told myself it was just the angle. Maybe my mirrors were dirty. Maybe the darkness was swallowing the vehicle's outline. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. As we approached a long straightaway, the car behind me finally did something different. It moved into the left lane. Relief washed over me so fast I almost laughed. They were passing. Whatever this was, it was over. The headlights drew level with my back bumper. Then my rear door. Then my front door. I turned my head slightly, trying not to stare too obviously. There was no car. I don't mean I couldn't see the driver. I mean there was nothing there. No hood. No doors. No wheels. Just headlights, suspended in midair, gliding alongside my window. And behind the lights, where a windshield should have been, was darkness. Deep, absolute black, like a hole cut into the night. The headlights slowed until they were perfectly aligned with my side mirror. Then they stopped moving. I screamed. I slammed the accelerator to the floor. My car surged forward, engine roaring in protest. The headlights didn't chase me. They stayed exactly where they were, hovering beside the road, motionless. In my rearview mirror, I watched them shrink into the distance until they vanished completely. I didn't slow down. I didn't breathe. I drove like that, white-knuckled, barely blinking, for the next 15 miles until I reached the exit. This time, there were lights. A gas station. Other cars. I pulled into the lot and sat there for nearly half an hour before I trusted my legs enough to stand. I checked my mirrors, walked around my car, looked down the highway. Nothing. I told myself it was exhaustion. Stress. A trick of the dark. But here's the part one can't explain. The next morning, after I finally got home, I noticed something on my car. On the driver's side door, right beneath the window, was a long smear, like something had dragged along the metal while moving beside me. It wasn't a scratch. It was a burn mark. 2 parallel lines. The exact distance apart as headlights. I was 17 when this happened, and it's the reason I still hate driving at night. Back then, I lived in a small desert town in southern Arizona. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and the highway is the only way in or out. Long, flat roads. Endless sand. No street lights for miles. One Friday night, my friend Marcus and I decided to drive to a neighboring town about an hour away. There was nothing to do where we lived, and the other town had a late-night diner we liked. It wasn't unusual for us to make the drive, even after dark. We left around 11:40 p.m. The air was warm, and the sky was clear. No clouds, no wind. The moon was bright enough to see the road stretching endlessly ahead, framed by desert on both sides. At first, everything was normal. We talked about school, music, stupid stuff. The radio played quietly in the background, switching between static and old rock songs as we moved farther from town. About 20 minutes into the drive, Marcus pointed ahead. "Hey," he said, "didn't we already pass that marker?" I glanced to the right side of the road. A reflective green sign flashed past my headlights. Mile 217. I shrugged. Probably another one like it. But 5 minutes later, we passed it again. Mile 217. Same scratches. Same dented pole. Same faded numbers. I slowed slightly, my stomach tightening. "That's weird," Marcus said. "Did you turn around or something?" "No," I replied. "We've been going straight." The road was perfectly straight. No turns. No forks. No curves sharp enough to confuse direction. We drove on in silence for a bit. Then it happened again. Mile 217. This time, Marcus laughed nervously. "Okay, that's not funny anymore." I pulled over to the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. I turned the engine off and stepped out, shining my phone's flashlight at the sign. It was real. Old bullet hole near the bottom. A rusted bolt halfway loose. Someone had scratched a name into the metal. Ricky, so faint it was barely visible. I remembered passing that scratch earlier. We got back in the car. "This is dumb," I said. "Probably some weird spacing thing." I started driving again. 10 minutes later. Mile 217. My heart started racing. Marcus leaned forward in his seat. "Bro, what if we're not actually moving?" I looked at the speedometer. 65 miles per hour. Steady. The gas gauge had dropped slightly. Time was passing. Music on the radio had changed. But the road looked the same. The desert looked the same. And no matter how long we drove, we never reached mile 218. That's when I noticed something else. There were no other cars. Not behind us. Not ahead of us. The highway was completely empty. I tried my phone. No signal. Marcus tried his. Nothing. We kept driving, hoping we'd eventually reach an exit or at least a different marker. Instead, we passed mile 217 again, and again, and again. I started to feel like the air inside the car was getting heavier, thicker. The headlights seemed dimmer, like the darkness ahead was swallowing them. Marcus whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first, I didn't. Then I rolled down my window, slightly. A sound drifted in from the desert. Footsteps. Slow. Uneven. Crunching softly on sand and gravel. But there was nothing out there. Just empty land stretching forever. I slammed the window shut and sped up. The road ahead finally changed. Not much, just a slight curve to the right. Relief washed over me. Then we saw it. A car parked on the shoulder ahead. Its hazard lights were flashing, blinking weakly in the dark. As we got closer, I saw it was an old sedan. Beige, covered in dust. The driver's door was open. Someone was standing beside it. A man, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes that blended into the night. He raised his arm and waved. Marcus shook his head violently. "Don't stop. Don't stop." I agreed. Something about the way the man stood, too still, too upright, made my skin crawl. I moved into the left lane and passed him. As we did, the man turned his head. His face was wrong. I can't explain it better than that. His eyes reflected the headlights too brightly, like an animal's. His mouth was stretched into a smile that was too wide, too stiff, and his skin looked dry, cracked, like it hadn't felt moisture in years. As we passed, he stepped toward the road. I floored it. In the mirror, I saw him walk back to his car, slowly, calmly, and get inside. The headlights of the sedan turned on, and it pulled onto the highway behind us. Marcus started breathing fast. No, 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 no. I tried to outrun it, but no matter how fast I drove, the distance between us stayed the same. Then we passed the mile marker again. Mile 217. The sedan's headlights flickered. The radio cut out completely. The road ahead darkened so much it looked like a tunnel. And then the car behind us turned off its headlights. It was still there. We could feel it. I could sense it the way you know someone is standing behind you, even without looking. Marcus whispered, "It's getting closer." I didn't check the mirror. I didn't want to. The footsteps started again, this time on pavement. Running. I screamed and slammed the brakes. The car behind us didn't hit us. Instead, something slammed into the trunk. The whole car jolted forward. Marcus shouted in pain as his head hit the dashboard. I threw the car into reverse without thinking. The road behind us was empty. No sedan, no man, just darkness. And the mile marker. Mile 217. I don't know how, but something inside me snapped. I turned the wheel sharply and drove straight off the road into the desert. The car bounced violently over sand and rocks. We nearly flipped. Then, suddenly, we were back on the highway. But this time, the sign we passed read, Mile 218. The radio came back on. Another car passed us going the opposite direction. Marcus and I screamed with relief. We didn't stop at the diner. We didn't talk. We drove straight home. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up highway records online. Mile 217 had a history. Multiple accidents. Disappearances. Drivers found abandoned cars on the shoulder with doors open, engines cold, and no sign of where the people went. Some locals claimed the road there looped at night. Others said if you stopped moving forward, something would notice you. I don't drive that highway anymore. And every time I see a mile marker now, I check it twice, just to make sure it changes. I used to drive rideshare at night because it paid better and the roads were quieter. Less traffic, fewer distractions. I told myself it was safer. I was wrong. This happened in early winter, a few weeks after I started driving full-time. I live in a mid-sized city, but most of my rides came from people traveling to or from nearby towns. The highways connected everything, and after midnight, they emptied out almost completely. One night, around 1:15 a.m., I got a request from a rest stop just outside city limits. That wasn't unusual. Truck drivers, stranded travelers, people whose cars broke down, it happened all the time. The pickup location was at the far edge of the rest area, near the truck parking section. I remember thinking it was odd because the app usually placed passengers near the main building. I pulled in slowly, headlights sweeping across rows of parked semis and darkened cars. The place was quiet, too quiet. Even the vending machines near the bathrooms looked shut down. I parked where the pin told me to. No one was there. I checked the app. Still active. The passenger icon hovered right behind my car. I messaged, "I'm here." No reply. Just as I was about to cancel, the rear passenger side door opened. I jumped. A man got in without saying a word. He looked normal at first glance. Mid-30s maybe. Dark hoodie pulled up, jeans, work boots. He smelled faintly of cold air and something metallic. "Hey," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Just confirm your name?" He didn't answer. He closed the door gently and sat completely still. I glanced at the app. The ride had started automatically. Destination: a town about 45 minutes away. Mostly highway driving. I told myself he was tired, or drunk, or just rude. I pulled out of the rest stop and merged onto the highway. For the first 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. I watched him in the rearview mirror. His face was mostly hidden by the hood, but I could see his eyes. He wasn't blinking. Not once. I adjusted the mirror, thinking maybe I just caught it between blinks. No change. His eyes were open wide, fixed on the back of my head. A chill crawled up my spine. I turned the radio on quietly. After a while, I tried again. "You doing okay back there?" He nodded once. Slowly. That was the only movement he made. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of us. No other cars passed. No headlights behind us. Just empty road and forest pressing in on both sides. About 20 minutes in, I noticed something strange. The reflection in my rearview mirror didn't match what I felt. The car felt heavier, like there was more weight in the back seat than one person. I glanced again. For just a second, it looked like someone else was sitting beside him. I blinked hard. There was only one man. My heart started beating faster. I focused on the road. Then I heard breathing. Not from behind me. Right behind my ear. I gasped and jerked the wheel slightly, correcting just in time to avoid drifting into the shoulder. The breathing stopped. I checked the mirror. The man hadn't moved. His mouth was closed. I swallowed hard. "Please don't do that," I said, my voice shaking. "You scared me." He tilted his head. That's when I noticed his reflection didn't quite line up. The angle was wrong. His head was tilted farther in the mirror than it was in real life. Like the reflection was delayed. Or independent. I didn't look again. I just drove. About 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message from the app. "Passenger has updated the destination." I glanced down. The new destination was the same. Same town. Same exit. But the estimated arrival time had increased. By 20 minutes. I frowned. That didn't make sense. The road was clear. Then the GPS voice said something that made my blood run cold. "Make a U-turn when possible." I hadn't missed an exit. I was still miles away. But the map showed the destination behind us. Inside the forest. There was no road there. I ignored it and kept driving straight. The breathing came back. This time it was louder. Wet. Like air passing through something damaged. I felt it on my neck. I whispered, "Stop." The man spoke the first time. "There's someone else here." My stomach dropped. I forced myself to look in the mirror. There were two reflections in the back seat. One was the man. The other was wrong. Its head was pressed against the ceiling, neck bent at an impossible angle. Its mouth was open wide, stretching too far down its face. Its eyes were sunken and glossy, staring directly into mine. But when I twisted around, the seat was empty. Only the man sat there, calm, still, watching. I screamed and floored the accelerator. The car surged forward. The highway lights ahead flickered, then went out entirely. We were driving through complete darkness now, my headlights barely cutting through the black. The man leaned forward slightly. His reflection leaned farther. So close it filled the mirror. "You weren't supposed to look," he said. Something cold brushed my shoulder. A hand. Too many fingers. I swerved, barely keeping control. The app suddenly canceled the ride. Trip ended. I didn't slow down. I shouted, "Get out. Get out of my car." The man laughed, but the sound came from everywhere at once. The weight in the back seat increased again. The car sagged. I felt pressure on my chest, like something was sitting on me. The speedometer flickered wildly. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The lights came back. The pressure vanished. The road was normal again. I slammed the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder, gasping for air. I twisted around. The back seat was empty. No man, no imprint, no smell. The passenger door was still locked. I sat there shaking for a long time. When I finally looked at my phone, there was no record of the ride. No pickup, no passenger, nothing. I quit rideshare the next day. Months later, I told a friend about it. He went pale and told me something I wish I didn't know. That rest stop used to be near a stretch of highway where people reported phantom hitchhikers. Drivers would pick up one person and feel two. Sometimes they find handprints on the inside of their windows. Too many fingers. I checked my car that night. On the inside of the rear passenger window, there were prints, pressed from the inside. I'm writing this because I don't drive anymore. Not because I can't, but because I won't. Some roads don't forget the people who notice them. This happened 5 years ago during a winter drive I took for work. I was a regional equipment technician, and my job sent me across state lines constantly. I knew highways better than most people know their own neighborhoods. The call came late, around 8 p.m. A client needed emergency service at a manufacturing site nearly 4 hours away. I debated refusing. A storm was coming in, and the route would take me through a long stretch of isolated highway that cut through forests and farmland. But I needed the money. I left just after 9 p.m. For the first 2 hours, everything was normal. Light snow, minimal traffic. The radio crackled with weather warnings, but nothing urgent. By the time I reached the rural stretch, it was close to midnight. That's when the storm worsened. Snow started coming down sideways, blurring the edges of the road. The trees closed in, branches arching over the highway like ribs. There were no towns, no gas stations, just mile markers and the occasional reflective sign flashing in my headlights. That's when I saw the hazard lights. They were far ahead, 2 amber blinks pulsing slowly through the snowfall. I slowed instinctively. A car was pulled over on the shoulder, half buried in snow. The hazard lights were on, but the headlights were off. I passed it at first. Then I saw movement. A figure stood near the driver's side door, waving one arm weakly. I checked my mirrors. No cars behind me. No cell service on my phone. I told myself what any decent person would think. They need help. I pulled over about 30 yards ahead and put my car in park. The snow muffled everything. Even my own breathing sounded distant. I stepped out and called, "Hey, you okay?" The figure didn't answer. They started walking toward me. Slowly. The closer they got, the more wrong they looked. They were tall, wearing a heavy coat, but it hung off them strangely, like it didn't quite fit their frame. Their movements were stiff, delayed, as if they were remembering how to walk. "Car won't start," they said when they were close enough for me to hear. Their voice was flat, emotionless. "I can call roadside assistance," I said. "Or you can sit in my car, warm up." They shook their head. "No phone," they said. Battery froze. I glanced past them at their car. The driver's door was open. Inside, the seats were covered in snow, which meant the door had been open for a while. "Too long." "How long have you been out here?" I asked. They didn't answer. They turned and walked back toward their car. Something about that should have made me leave. Instead, I followed. Their car was old. Late 90s sedan. No plates on the back. The inside smelled stale, like air that had been trapped too long. I popped the hood and leaned in to take a look. Everything seemed intact. Then I noticed the engine wasn't warm. Not even a little. That made no sense. "It should at least be warm," I said. "Did it die recently?" They were standing behind me now. Very close. "It didn't die," they said. "It stopped." A sudden pressure built in my ears, like a change in altitude. The snow stopped falling. Everything went quiet. Too quiet. I straightened and turned toward them. Their face was wrong. Not damaged. Not monstrous. Just wrong. Their eyes were cloudy, like frosted glass. Their mouth twitched when they tried to smile, like the muscles didn't quite work anymore. "You should go," they said. The hazard lights stopped blinking. The forest beyond the road went completely dark. I took a step back. "I'm calling for help," I said, even though my phone still showed no signal. They tilted their head. "You already stopped," they said. "That's the part that matters." The pressure in my ears intensified. My vision blurred. I stumbled backward and nearly fell. The car door slammed shut behind me. Not their car. Mine. I spun around. My car's hazard lights were on, blinking. Slowly, I ran to the driver's door and yanked on it. Locked. I hit the window with my fist. Open it. Open the door. The figure stood a few feet away, watching. They'll stop for you now, they said calmly. That's how it works. My breath fogged the air in frantic bursts. I ran back toward the road, waving my arms, screaming as loud as I could. Headlights appeared through the snow. A pickup truck slowed. Relief nearly knocked me to my knees. The truck pulled over. The driver rolled his window down slightly. Everything okay? He called. I screamed, don't stop. Get back in your truck and go. He frowned, confused. Behind me, I felt movement. The figure was closer now. The driver's eyes shifted past me. His expression changed. He reached for his door handle. No, I begged. Please. Just drive. The hazard lights on my car blinked brighter. The figure raised its hand. The truck door opened. That's when the world snapped back. Sound rushed in. Snow started falling again. The figure was gone. The driver looked around, confused. You all right, man? I didn't answer. I ran. I didn't look back. I got in my car, somehow it was unlocked, and drove. I didn't stop until I reached the client's site at dawn. I told them I was sick and left immediately. I didn't talk about what happened. Not until months later. I was watching local news when a familiar stretch of highway appeared on screen. The reporter talked about a series of incidents. Drivers stopping for disabled vehicles with hazard lights. Cars found abandoned. Engines cold. Hazards still blinking. People gone. They never showed the faces. But I recognized the road. And every time I see hazard lights on a highway now, I don't slow down.